So you'll give me a few minutes to share some thoughts with you. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It seems pretty natural that the Torah would begin with the story of creation. After all, we all want to know where we came from. It's a question that starts when we're very little children. And in some ways, we also have curiosity about creation and where the world comes from as long as we live. Yet, as we heard last night with a particular perspective, it wasn't natural for some of our commentators to see the Torah beginning with the story of creation. Rashi, quoting Rabbi Yitzchak, asks, why does the Torah begin with creation? And the answer given is that it should have begun with the very first mitzvah of the Torah. That is the first responsibility as a Jew and for the Jewish people, which is found in the observance of the Rosh Chodesh, HaChodesh. And yet it shows something else. And this is an interesting thing that Rashi was thinking about in the 12th century, and Rabbi Yitzchak was thinking about in the 2nd or 3rd century. And that is, this story shows that God is the supreme power, the creator. And as the creator, he created the entire world. And if God could create the entire world for all of his creatures and creations, he surely could create a sliver of land that was for his people, for the Jewish people. And so for Rashi and for the commentators before him, this story is actually a proof text of the connection and promise of the Jewish people and its holy land. Obviously, it's a bit of a Zionist polemic, and it's interesting to think of it in those terms. But it points to the deep connection that our entire tradition has between our people, between our God, and between our land. Isn't it wonderful that we have this cycle of Torah readings? We can go back to them again and again and again. As it's said in Pirkei Avot, turn it and turn it and turn it again, and you shall find everything in it. But these are our formative texts and our most important teachings, and we, each of us, integrate what we read with what we have read in the past, and what we have learned in the past, and what we have experienced in the past. And as we learn more and experience more in life, and our perceptions grow and change, we see the text a little bit differently. Our teachers from the past, be they our parents and grandparents, or be they our rabbis and teachers, they've seen this creation story in relationship to a people and to a land and to a God. I've been blessed to have many wonderful, wonderful teachers, outstanding thinkers in the Jewish world. And certainly amongst them, and one who really stands out for me as a teacher is Rabbi Ishmar Shorsh, from the former chancellor of JTS and a great, great Jewish scholar. And he taught me about this story in a little bit of a different way. He taught me this is a fundamental story about God and the universe. It's a story that asserts primary values, and it asserts at its core one God. It's a story that begins to answer a question: where do I come from? The story is told from the perspective of the religious mind and the religious seeker. We cannot, nor should we, see it as a scientific study. It's not worthy of equal time in our schools with astrophysics and Darwinian theory of evolution. No, this is not science. This is about a religious search. Its description of creation is quite sparse, and yet it's majestic. And it offers an orientation to the world's entire, it offers an orientation to the worldview of the Torah, because the story grounds religious belief or faith in the nature of things. So the story is really independent of a scientific context. I believe that the searching mind needs to read the works of the great astrophysicists and philosophers and scientists to gain more knowledge. But I also believe that we have to read this story over and again to gain understanding. It's an understanding of something different. In all of literature, there's rarely been so many profound ideas packed into such a little section. So the first is the assertion of monotheism. There's a single source of creation and existence as we know it. For the polytheist, the grandeur, the diversity, and the complexity of the single cell is reflected in something different, in something that comes either from different places or is the function of warring gods, but not for us. The entire universe for us is attributed to a single source. It did begin somewhere. It began at some point. Other ancient Near Eastern cultures did have their creation stories. All of them were about a primordial existence before the world came into being. And there were wars between their gods. But our story has no pre-cosmic existence of God. And there's no idea of what God looks like. No, there is a beginning. And our story tells of a God who's beyond the human imagination and certainly beyond our control. So monotheism is a brave step towards imbuing existence with a measure of order and a measure of predictability. The entire story is about the separation of things to create a sense of order. And that's where it begins. And we're experiencing this great need right now for a sense of order. Maimonides asked the question, how did Abraham come to believe in one God? And Maimonides brings a story from the rabbis of Abraham looking up into the heavens and seeing the moon and the stars and the planets, and internalizing from the experience of looking up into the heavens a sense there's such a great order that there has to be one source. So this is one of the ideas as to what brought a belief in one God. And with that belief, then we realized the meaning of order and some predictability in this world, which we need to live. In our story, it is out of chaos that God creates order. The world was tohu vavohu. And that's our assumption about the world. Creation and the evolution of life itself is dependent on an orderly universe, on the laws of physics and science, biology, genetics. And as God created this order, an order where night follows day and day follows night, we have not only have reverence for that order, but live our lives in such a way as to create order in the midst of diversity, the diversity in the world. In the case of creation, there was moons and stars and planets, all moving orderly throughout this universe. And we realize that order does not mean sameness. It means that we can have difference and have a structure that functions. That's the world we live in. So if the world began with one single source and then according to the Big Bang, it exploded into multiple pieces, which is also part of our mystical tradition in the Zohar. And all of those happenings, there emerges one place, at least as we know at this moment, where there's intelligent life. There emerges one place where there is humanity. Maybe one day we'll find other places, but for now, this is the world we inhabited. The second far-reaching notion is related to Shabbat. It's not a simple side story, as I alluded to in the introduction to the Torah reading. It's part of the description of creation itself. And the Torah stands alone with a creation story that contains 7 days, anchored in a day where nothing happens, a day to stop, a day where even the Creator rests. And so our creation story contains an idea that we have a Creator who rests, and therefore there is something more to the universe than the material creation. There's a day for the soul and a day for the spirit. You know, going back to the first century, the Roman intellectuals ridiculed the idea that there would be a people who are asking their fellows to give up a seventh of their life to sheer idleness. But our story links this day to the design of creation in order to give ultimate permission for a day where we stop, lishbot. God rested and we rested. God stopped and we stopped. As to the purpose of Shabbat, the context would suggest that it is meant to inhibit our desire to dominate everything and to own everything. And although God creates a human being as the pinnacle of his work and gives us the commandment to be fertile and increase and fill the earth and dominate it, we also learn that there are going to be limits on what we do and how much we own. So Shabbat reminds us that we're tenants in the world, that we didn't make this world. We didn't create this world, but yet we're given a responsibility to preserve it and to make sure that it's transmitted to future generations in good working order. So every Shabbat, as we recite Kiddush, we affirm that natural dimension of Shabbat. Zikaron l'ma'aseh Bereshit. This day is not just a reminder of our freedom, it's a reminder of the works of creation. It connects us to that very beginning. And so we create and we transcend the material world in which we find ourselves. This is the day of holiness. And the final idea deals with principles that govern human relationships and eventually become the foundation of our political system. And that is, there's a statement here. The statement is that human life has ultimate value. To take a life usually involves bringing an end to a chain of human beings that would have sprung forth from that life. So in the Parsha, we read that God accuses Cain of killing not only his brother Abel, but killing all of his offspring, those not even born. God asks, what have you done? Your brother's blood, which is written as damim in the plural, not in the singular as dam. Your brother's blood cry out to me from the ground. It's an assertion that this is the reason that the world began with God creating a single person. A single person carried all of the future of humanity. Thus, we learn from the rabbis that anyone who destroys a single life, it's regarded as if he destroyed the whole world, and anyone who saves a single life is regarded as if he saved the whole world. What an extraordinary idea. It's not just about one individual. It's about where one individual comes from and the potential of the world which will be built. The Torah begins with this parsha because it's teaching us something so important about our understanding, not just of being Jewish, but about being a human being. Every human being is of equal value. And so we know that the Mishnah says the world was created with just a single person so that no one could say, my ancestor is greater than your ancestor. Sharing a common origin gives rise to a vision of human equality. Think about that. No one is so special. We all come from the same Adam. It's built into the story. And this is the way we read the beginning of the world. This is the way we read the intention of creation and the intention of the Creator. And then finally, the Mishnah, in its teaching about creation and the ingenuity of God, says that unlike human artisans who can mint identical coins from one single mold, God fills the world with an endless, diverse stream of humanity. Every single person is unique. Each one of us is entitled to declare, for my sake, this world was created. So in a few very bold strokes, the Mishnah turns the story of creation into what we would consider a political discourse on human value, the equal rights of the individual, and the potential that every individual has for the future of the world. This is why the Torah begins with the story of creation. And this is why we come back to it every year. It reminds us as to what is most important about being a human being. It's life itself. It's the fact that life is dependent on a created order. It's the fact that the universe and its beauty and its nature and its wonder gives us not only pause to reflect and feel appreciation, but also to hope. So I know that at this point, most of you have heard that the Steinhardt family has a new little baby boy, Steinhardt, a gift from Sarah Danet Steinhardt and Noah Steinhardt, and a gift from God. And all of us have had to pause for a moment, at least, in the midst of this very challenging and difficult world, to be able to repeat the words that we find in Shachrit, Ma Rabu Ma'asecha Adonai, Kulam Bechachma Asita. How wondrous is your creation, God. With wisdom, this world was made. And so again, as with every birth of every child, there's a sense that we're part of the miracle of creation, the creation of the universe and the creation of a single soul, the creation of humanity and the creation of a little baby. And this Shabbat, I'm here with a great sense of humility for life itself, a great sense of gratitude for all of the gifts we receive as my family, and I know many of you join me, welcoming a new little addition into this world. And so as you see, we do learn so much from the texts. And as we continue to read them again and as we get older, we learn more and more. And we learn so much from our lived out realities. And from both of them, we can say, Baruch Hashem. We praise the Holy One, the creator of life, the creator of this universe with which and from which we are all blessed. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.